Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Frankly Speaking. I'm your host, Frank Zabarik. Steve Grohman is a creation science evangelist. Okay, a couple more interesting subjects. Now, the Garden of Eden. There's probably been like a lot of explorers and anthropologists and stuff like that. I guess one of the things that he's mentioned, that Mr. Sailhammer's mentioned, is Syria, Albania, and Palestine as potential spots for the Garden of Eden. But then again, if we would, I guess one of the key that's used by anthropologists, it's the start of the Nile, Ganges, Tigris, and Euphrates rivers, where they supposedly all meet at once. It's supposed to be where the Garden of Eden is, but I guess they've been unsuccessful on trying to locate exactly. But then again, if you went to the Garden of Eden, let's say you went to like Honolulu, the beaches of Hawaii, or the beaches of Aruba, saying, wow, this is so beautiful, scenically beautiful. This must be the Garden of Eden. But yet Hawaii and Aruba is nowhere close to the Nile, Ganges, Euphrates, or Tigris. So do you have any theories on... And plus, wouldn't it, after the fall of Adam and Eve, wouldn't like thorns grow on it and scorpions?
First of all, the Bible says this earth was flooded, that destroyed everything in the time of Noah. So to expect to find a garden, the Garden of Eden, and know for a fact that this is it right here, this is it. And there have been several people, like you're saying, there have been several places and several people who they believe they know where it is or whatever, but there isn't evidence for it the way that we would need evidence to confirm that it was it. Number one, but also at the time of the flood, everything's destroyed. The rivers that we have today weren't necessarily the same as what they were, even though they're named the same. We're in, there's Bedford, New Hampshire, but there's Bedford, but there's another Bedford. There's Manchester, but there's another Manchester, a previous Manchester that has nothing to do with where Manchester is today, here.
Okay.
These guys come from overseas, they come here, and notice how much of the terminology is the same thing, number one. And it very well may be the same with rivers. Even today, in our lifetime, the Mississippi River will change courses from time to time in various locations. In the last couple hundred years, we've been to some of the places because we travel full time. Oftentimes, where it used to be is way off in the distance. I'm talking just a couple hundred years ago type of thing, because floods changed things. And but also, it was during the flood, because in the pre-flood world, this earth wasn't the way that it is today. The tall mountains and the deep valleys that are in the oceans and all that, they weren't there yet. They came in during the flood. When everything is underwater, and it's been underwater for a long time because this flood took a long time to happen, when the mountains rose and the valleys sank down and the washouts take place, the rivers that they see today that are named the same, there's no way to know for sure that that's the exact same river, the exact same place, and all that kind of thing. So again, it's one of those things that a lot of people are very, very hard, staunch, strong on their statements about it or whatever. But we got to be careful with some of that kind of stuff too, because we just don't know for sure, because there was a flood that ruined everything, destroyed everything, which could have altered and no doubt did alter the landscape as we see it today versus pre-flood. So there's a problem with that. The thorns and the scorpions and all that. There are a lot of examples of animals that look mean and fierce and such that aren't necessarily. And even the ones that doesn't mean they used to be that way, because the fear and dread wasn't instilled till Genesis 9 when they're getting off of the ark. Prior to the flood, everything was friendly, vegetarian and all that. Even though the fall took place, and even though the thorns are going to be, the sweat of the brow, man had to till the earth now and get involved in this stuff. There were issues with that, but it doesn't mean, how can I say this? even if plants have thorns, and even if they're in a location, for instance, that is, you never go there. I mean, my wife and I do a lot of hiking, a lot of outdoor stuff. There are places you could be in a city and you don't touch a thing, but you go in a certain place and you get all kinds of stuff. So just because there are thorns, or just because I don't necessarily think that means they showed up just then. They may have been there. There was no reason to mess with them. There was no reason to deal with them. But again, the Bible's not specific on why that happened. It only says that it happened. And so any of the whys that we would want to come up with that, it would just almost be pure speculation.
Is the Garden of Eden and the Promised Land the exact same thing?
I don't think so. There are people that do say that. They do think that. I don't think so. I'll throw you a curveball. I think there's a good chance that the Garden of Eden was at the North Pole, because the Bible talks about Lucifer and Isaiah and Ezekiel. There are different places talk about the holy mountain of God, and talks about the sides of the north. But there are all kinds of issues that people have beliefs about or understandings that we just really can't know. There's some things that, and maybe one day something will be discovered that'll confirm something, but up until that time, and that's happened many times too, where, scoffers of the Bible will say, so-and-so never existed, the Bible's wrong, or such and such a place never existed, the Bible's wrong. We just didn't know about it yet. Then they'll find a piece of scroll or a piece of pottery with inscriptions and engravings on them, or I guess he did live after all, and there've been many of those kind of things that man wants to ridicule the Bible when really it's just, we don't understand that yet. Nobody knows that yet.
Why can't people, specifically Christians, why do we have to choose either God or science? Why can't we live, harmoniously? Why can't God and science live harmoniously together? From Joshua 10, 12 through 13, which is a great story, but if you listen to it, okay, I'll read it. Then spake Joshua to the Lord in the day when the Lord delivered up the Amorites up to the children of Israel. And he said in the sight of Israel, Sun, stand thou still upon Gibeon, and thou moon in the valley of Ajolan. And the sun stood still, and the moon stayed, until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemy. Is not this written in the book of Jasher? So the sun stood still in the midst of heaven, and hastened not to go down about a whole day. So wouldn't Joshua, wouldn't this verse have to be that God made the earth and the moon stand still until they had enough daylight? How could he make the sun stand still when the sun is stationary?
Yeah, there are, and I want to get back to that science and the Bible getting along comment too, because there's a lot of importance to that too. But we're in our 26th year, and that's a long time. I had people back the first couple of years give me books on geocentrism versus heliocentrism and all that kind of stuff, and there are good arguments on both sides of the coin if you look at them and all that kind of thing. I'm not advocating one way or the other on this interview right now. I'm just saying that there have been people looking at all this stuff for a long, long time. Man obviously has different understandings and impressions about the same topic. I mean, we just do, we do. People study things, and I have been the kind of guy that I always want to study everything out, and because of the nature of the topic, and because we open up the question and answer time, I get a lot of out there questions, and so I study topics and things that many people just don't. But some people, that is their thing, okay? But having said all that, I actually believe that God means what he says in his word. John 17:17 says, thy word is truth. And there are issues that, people will say, well, he stopped the earth, and just give you the both sides of the thing. He stopped the earth and then picked it back up again, okay? But that's not what the text says. It says the sun and the moon stood still. If you stop the earth, if this thing's spinning 1,000 miles an hour, then we got some other issues there too. So he had to stabilize all that also, and literally freeze everything, which he could certainly do. He's the one that put everything here. He could stop whatever, he's in control.
Yeah.
By him all things consist, the Bible says. If we never understand that goes back to one of those points I was mentioning earlier. If we never even understand how that's possible, I still believe that's what happened, because that's what he says. Once again, man can come up with ideas and theories and philosophies and say, well, but it doesn't mean that. Doesn't mean it's a contradiction. It's, again, one of those things that maybe we just don't understand something yet. And that's the problem is usually when the Bible says one thing, but science says another thing. How come it's always the Bible that has to change? How come it's always the Bible that has to be reinterpreted to fit what science says? Maybe the science is wrong, because that's why I've subscribed to many, many science publications for years and years and years, all this time. And it is amazing how many times, just about every publication, there are all kinds of articles that basically say, new discovery. Now we've got the answer, only to find out 2 months later, another new discovery. Now we've got the answer. They change their mind all the time. So to be, again, I use the word dogmatic, that the Bible is wrong or is a contradiction or something because science has shown something, that's kind of a dangerous place to be, because science has been known to change constantly. I show a textbook. I think you were there. It says it's a biology textbook used in our schools all across this country. Current book. It says this book contains lots of facts and ideas about living things. Many of those facts are important, and you'll be tested on them. One thing you can be sure that some facts presented in this book will change soon if they haven't changed already. So
A disclaimer.
So, but things are taught as a fact. In some cases, it's taught as a fact, and they know it's already changed. Some cases it's taught as a fact, and they know it's going to change soon. But the Bible's forever settled in heaven. It's already settled. Thy word is truth. And it was written thousands of years ago, and it always shows to be accurate. A book off the printing press today admits it's not accurate. So to hang a hat on science and say the Bible therefore is wrong, that can be a dangerous kind of thing too.